Have you ever watched a stream and at some point they have a cool call to action animation that reminds you to follow the stream? It looks something like this. Today, we're gonna make one of those in Blender 2.8, which you can download for free, no strings attached, in the link in the description below. And just a heads up, this tutorial is going to be in 2 parts. In the first part, we're going to set up the scene, model everything, and get it ready for animation. Then, in part 2, we're gonna spend some quality time animating and just making it look amazing. All of that being said, let's get started. My name is Chris Folea. I'll be your stream professor. Welcome to StreamSchool. Okay, first things first, in Blender, you'll notice that I have screencast keys enabled in the lower left-hand corner. That'll allow you to see exactly what I'm doing, just in case you miss something. Next, let's go ahead and get our file set up for success. We'll do that by coming to the camera icon right here, coming down to Color Management, then where it says View Transform Filmic, click Filmic and change that to Standard. Filmic is really good for a natural color roll-off for photorealistic scenes. However, it does mess with your colors, which we absolutely do not want. So we want to choose Standard for a simple motion media scene like this to keep our vibrant purple. Next, we're going to go to the lower left-hand corner right here, click and drag to split this into 2 3D panels. Then do the exact same thing, but vertically, so we have a total of 3. Then we're going to make sure our mouse is hovered over the top left panel and hit 0 to go to the camera view. Then we'll hit T to get rid of the tools, and then finally, you'll notice we have this orange outline and we have the 3D crosshair or 3D cursor, as well as some grid elements. And we don't really want those in our preview window, so we'll come up to this overlapping circle button right here and click it to get rid of all of that. Finally, for a fully rendered view, you can hold down Z, move your mouse up to rendered, and then release. And now you can see exactly what the final rendered image is going to look like right here at any time. And this is completely optional if your computer can't handle it, but it is a nice to have. After that, I went to Twitch and screen capped an image of their follow button just to use as a reference. So this is completely optional, but I'm gonna go to the image editor, go to Image, Open, and then just navigate my hard drive to find my copy of the follow button reference, which is right here, just so we have something to work from for a general reference. You'll notice it has a rounded purple rectangle with the heart and the follow text. Then we're gonna wanna come over to the 3D viewport over here, select the cube and delete it, then select the light and delete it. Then we're gonna want to grab the camera, hit Alt-R, to reset the rotation, and Alt-G to reset the location. Then we'll grab our movement gizmo and move it up just like this, so we have a nice place to put our follow button right at the center of the grid. Then we're gonna hit H to hide the camera because otherwise it's gonna get in our way. Then we're gonna hit 7 to go to the top view, and now we are ready to get started. So, as I said, the follow button has 3 elements. It has the heart, the rounded rectangle, and the follow text. Then we're also going to want to create a mouse pointer to click the button in our animation. We're going to start with the heart and the follow text so we know how big to make the rectangle. So let's go ahead and start out with the heart. To do that, I'm going to hit Shift A, go to Mesh, and then grab a circle. Now we have a new circle. We're going to zoom in on that with the mouse wheel, hit Tab to go to Edit Mode, and select the top vertex. Then we're going to come up here to Soft Select, because right now you'll notice that if I move this vertex, don't do this by the way, nothing moves with it. We want all of this stuff to move, like sort of cave in with this to make a nice heart shape. So I'm gonna right click to undo that. Then I'm gonna come up here to Soft Select and click that button, click the drop down right next to it and go down to Sharp. Now you'll notice when I move this, it moves with it. So to do that, you're gonna hit G and then Y to move it on the Y axis and then move it down until it looks about right. And you can change the area of effect by scrolling your mouse wheel up and down. So I'm gonna get something that looks something like that maybe. Then grab the bottom one right here and do the exact same thing but in the opposite direction. Then we can grab the top one and move it down some more. Notice this heart looks kind of squished, and we can fix that to some extent. It won't be perfect, but it'll look good enough. So I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna select these 2 vertices on the side, then I'm gonna come back up top here and change the soft select to smooth. Then if we hit S and then X to scale on the X axis, we can scale this out to make our heart look much more natural. And again, you can change the area of effect here just to get something that looks more correct. Finally, I'm gonna move this point up just a little bit to try to match our reference a little bit better. So I'm gonna go back to sharp, then I'm going to hit G and then Y to move it on the Y-axis, and then scroll my mouse wheel down to change the area of effect and mess with it. Move it around until we have something that looks just about perfect. Finally, we want this heart to be centered on its center point. So I'm gonna hit A to select all of the vertices, then G and Y to move it up to the center, just like that. Finally, we want this to be a nice outline. So we're gonna hit F to fill in the heart, then we're going to hit I to do an inset and make this as thick as you want. I'm gonna put mine about here to try to match the reference, then click to apply it. Finally, we're gonna hit 3, not numpad 3, just regular 3, to go to face select on the keyboard. I'm going to select the middle face here. We're gonna come over to our materials panel and then hit new, and then hit the plus button, and then hit new again. That'll give us 2 materials to work with. The first one, we're going to make white, and we'll just call this white. Then the next one, we're gonna click here and call this one Twitch Purple. You can honestly call it whatever you want, the name doesn't really matter. First of all, we wanna change these to emission materials. So I'm gonna come here where the surface says principled and change that to emission. Then I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the white material as well. So on Twitch Purple, white should already be white. You can click it just to make sure. Then on Twitch Purple, we're gonna select the color and you can either manually move it around, like so, or you can grab the eyedropper and eyedrop from the actual Twitch button. Then we want to apply that to the center face right here. We could also just delete the center face, but this is just the option that I chose to go with. So I'm gonna hit assign, and now we have the outline and the purple in the center. And again, this heart's not perfect, but it's not gonna be big enough on screen for it to really matter. Then finally, we can hit tab to get out of edit mode, and we can move this follow button, or this heart over here. We can just manipulate it, move it around, because now it's time to add some text. So I'm gonna hit Shift A, go to text, and you can change the font to match the Twitch font if you want to. I believe it's Roboto, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm just gonna keep the default Blender font. So we can hit tab to go into edit mode, change this to follow, and there we have our follow text. Super easy. Now let's get these 2 elements lined up, and then we'll put a nice rectangle around them. So we're gonna grab the heart, hit S, and then just move our mouse in to make it match about the size of the follow text. Then move that over just by hitting G. Just move it over to wherever we want it to be. Right there looks pretty good, which gives us both the heart and the follow text. But you'll notice that the follow text is not white yet, and that's because we haven't applied a material. So we're gonna select that, hit the material drop down right here, and go to white. So now we have the white follow text and then the white outline heart. So let's create the sort of rectangle or rounded rectangle behind these after we center them on the screen. So let's go ahead and center these on the screen, and then we're going to create the follow button rectangle behind these. So I'm just gonna select both of these items and move them around until they're centered on the screen. And then we're gonna scale them down until they're a reasonable size. Like I said, the faceted nature and the imperfection of the heart doesn't really matter when it gets smaller like this. But you can manipulate your heart's geometry to your heart's content to get it to look exactly how you want. I'm just gonna move these around and keep scaling using the S key until we get something that we sort of like. Because remember, we need to leave area for the mouse to come in and click the button. And we also need to leave area for the button. So we don't want this to be too big. We just want it to fit within the camera and then leave some space. So that looks about right to me. So let's go ahead and create the rectangle now. So I'm going to hit Alt A to deselect everything. Then I'm gonna hit Shift A to add a mesh and a plane. And you're gonna notice if we move around with our middle mouse button and whatnot, that these are on the exact same plane vertically. So we're gonna move the button portion down just a little bit, not a whole lot, just enough to where they aren't overlapping. Then we're going to use our scale gizmo to scale this down on the y-axis until we get something that we're happy with, and then scale it on the x-axis. And you'll notice that the text is not perfectly centered. and we can sort of fix that in just a second. So let's just scale this around until we get something that we're generally happy with. And I want to add a white outline to my follow button, so I'm gonna make this just a little bit thicker than you might expect. Finally, we can come up here and grab the movement gizmo, select both the heart and the follow, and then center these perfectly. You'll notice, however, that we don't have rounded corners, and we can fix that super easily. So we can select our plane, go into edit mode by hitting tab, then hit E to extrude, and extrude it down just like that. You can extrude it as far as you want because we're gonna delete that later. We're literally just extruding it to help us get rounded corners. Then we're gonna hit 2 on the keyboard to go to edge select, and we're gonna select all 4 of these edges, which we do have one more step before we bevel these. So we're gonna hit tab to leave edit mode, hit Control A to apply the scale. If we don't apply the scale, we're gonna get some really weird beveling results for the rounded corners, which we do not want. Finally, I'm gonna hit 7 to go to the top. If we hit tab, we should still have our edges all selected. So then I'm just gonna hit Control B to bevel and move the mouse, and you'll notice that we get these sort of diagonal corners, which looks cool, but it's not quite what we want. We want rounded corners. So to do that, you can just scroll up on the mouse wheel to add subdivisions until it looks nice. And you can make your follow button as rounded as you want. I'm gonna make mine about right there. Then we can go to the front view by hitting 1, hit Z, hold Z and go to wireframe, then hit 1 on the keyboard to go to vertex select, hit Alt A to deselect everything, then do a box select with B, click and drag, and then we're gonna delete these vertices. So now, if we go to our top view, we have just the rounded rectangle, exactly how we want it. Then we're gonna hit A to select everything and inset if you want the white outline. I personally do. And we're gonna make this about as thick as the heart. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. Nobody's gonna notice except for you all. So I'm just gonna click to apply that inset, and now we need to assign these two materials. So I'm gonna hit the plus button over here twice, hit assign for the second material on the inside of the rectangle, then hit tab to leave edit mode, select the first material, select the drop down and go to white. Now we have our nice white outline, then select the second material and go to Twitch purple. So now we have basically our follow button. And I don't think it's centered perfectly vertically, so I'm going to select the follow and the heart, and we're gonna move those up just a little bit till we get something that we like. This looks pretty good to me. Now, to finish out the modeling portion of this tutorial, we need to make a mouse cursor, which the only reference we need is already on our screen. You can see me moving it around right now. So to do that, I'm gonna hit Alt A to deselect everything, Shift A to create a mesh plane, then I'm gonna hit G and just drag it over here out of the way somewhere. So you'll notice that the left side of the cursor is perfectly straight, and then the top side is diagonal at about a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to just hit tab to go to edit mode, select this upper right-hand vertex, hit G, and you're gonna notice that I still have my soft select on, and we're gonna wanna turn that off. So I'm gonna make sure that's off, otherwise everything's gonna get screwed up when we try to move stuff around going forward. Then I'm gonna hit G and then Y to move this down until we have something that sort of resembles our mouse cursor, and then hit click to apply it. So this doesn't look bad to me. We're gonna wanna divide right about here. And we can do that by hitting K to bring up our knife tool, select this vertex. Normally it would highlight that. Yeah, okay, so select that vertex, click, and then this doesn't have to be perfect either, since it's gonna be moving around on screen. Just click somewhere out here when it looks about right, and then hit enter to apply. Then we can select these two vertices and hit delete and vertices. Now we have a triangle, and we can move this point around until it looks about correct. Finally, we're gonna select these two vertices right here, right click and do a subdivide. Then under the options in the lower left-hand corner, which might get covered up a little bit by the screencast keys, we're gonna change the number of cuts to 2. and that'll give us an area to put our little stem coming out of the cursor. So let's look at our cursor again, which you can look at your mouse cursor, it's on your screen, and you'll notice that has like a little branch coming out of it, and this sort of like caves in. So to do that, we're going to select these two vertices right here that we just created, hit S to scale those in just a little bit, then we're gonna hit G for grab to move them up until we're happy with the shape, and then we're going to hit E for extrude to extrude this down like so. Beautiful. And we can, again, constantly be selecting these edges. You can go to edge select with 2 on the keyboard and just sort of manipulate this until it looks about right. Finally, we can select this edge or these 2 vertices, right click and subdivide those and move this guy out just like that. And then do the exact same thing for either side to round it out. And you can subdivide this as many times as you want to round it out, and then manipulate the positions of these vertices using G to grab. But I'm just gonna leave it like this because it's gonna be pretty small on screen, and from a distance that looks pretty round. Finally, we can select all of these using a box select or B, and then just move them in to maybe make it match the actual cursor a little bit better. Finally, the real cursor has a black outline, then it's filled with white. So we're going to add 2 materials here, and the first one, we're gonna create a new material and call this black. The second one, we're gonna select the drop down and choose our already established white material. For the black material, we're gonna go to surface and change that to emission, and then change the color to black. So now our cursor is fully black, so we need to create the outline. So I'm gonna hit 3 on the keyboard to go to face select all of these faces, and then I'm just gonna inset like so to create our outline. We don't want it to be too thick, we just want it to make the mouse stand out a little bit. Then we already have the inside faces selected, so we'll just hit white and hit assign. Just like that, you'll notice we have a mouse cursor, but it's not centered on the center point right here, so we can hit F3 to bring up the sort of search menu, and then we can say set origin by just typing it into the search bar, hit enter, and then do origin to geometry. And that's not quite what we want. We'd prefer it to be further over here, so we can manipulate that in edit mode by hitting tab, hitting A to select everything, and then G just to move this until it's centered pretty much where we want it, which is somewhere around there. Then we can hit tab to leave edit mode, hit S to scale this guy down just a little bit in relation to the follow button, and then move it over here. And then you'll notice that this is on the same plane as the text, which we probably want this to be a little bit above. So I'm just gonna move that vertically on the Z-axis, just a tiny bit. And now we have all of our models done. And we can move this around with G wherever we want. We're gonna animate this in the next tutorial. Finally, we want to get this set up for animation. We need to rig our button, essentially. So what I want for the final animation, as you saw in the example, is for the mouse to come on, click it, have the button shrink down, hiding the text, and then have the heart fill in. So we need to rig all of those elements. So first things first, let's get the text set up for animation. I'm gonna select the text, hit F3 to bring up our search bar, then I'm going to type convert to, and I'm going to go to mesh from curve meta surf text. And that will turn our text into a mesh. Finally, we can hit F3 and type separate and go down to mesh, separate. It'll bring up this menu right here, and you're gonna wanna do separate by loose parts. So now each individual letter is its own mesh. However, you'll notice if we scale one of these by hitting S, it scales all the way down to the far left. That's because its origin point is all the way over here. So we can select all of these letters by holding Shift and selecting them, hit F3 and then set origin, and then we'll do origin to geometry. And now if we come up here to the chain link and select individual origins and then scale it using S on the keyboard, you'll notice that they all scale on their own origins, which isn't perfect, and you can manipulate their centers in edit mode if you really want to, but we're not gonna worry about it for this tutorial because it's gonna be animating in and out pretty quickly. Next, we need to be able to make this rounded box shrink without messing with the corners or squishing the corners. So right now, if we hit S and X to scale this on the X-axis, you'll notice that the corners deform and the outline gets really skinny on the edges, but not on the top. It just looks bad. So we're gonna do this with hooks. So we're gonna hit Tab to go to edit mode, 1 to go to vertex select, and Alt A to deselect everything. Then we're gonna hit B to go to box select, click and drag. We're gonna hit F3 to bring up the search menu, and then we'll do hook to new object. And that creates an empty right there. Then we'll hit Alt A to deselect and do the exact same thing on the left hand side, hook to new object. So now you'll notice we can move these hooks in and out and the corners don't get squished. Beautiful. One last thing we want to do to get this ready for animation is have one object for the entire button to be parented to. So we can just move that object to move the entire button. So for that, I'm gonna hit Shift A, go to empty, and we're gonna add a sphere. You can do any one of these shapes that you want. A sphere is just nice to me. So we have this sphere. We're gonna wanna select all of these beautiful letters. We're gonna wanna select the heart, and we're gonna want to select the 2 hooks. Selecting the rounded box is completely optional. So then we select, finally, this empty that we created, and we hit Control P on the keyboard, and then say set parent to object. So now if we rotate this around and move it, you'll notice that the entire button moves with it, which is exactly what we want. Then one last thing we want to do is make it so that the heart can fill in when the button animates. So we're gonna go ahead and add one more hook by zooming in on the heart, selecting it, pressing Tab, and then make sure that all of these vertices are selected. If they're not, you can just hold Alt, then select in between 2 of the vertices, and it'll select all of them. Then we're gonna hit F3, do hook to new object, hit enter, and then we're going to hit Tab, and now you'll notice that we can scale down this hook, and if we have this rendered view, you'll notice that we can just fill the heart right in. Now our scene is ready for animation. And that concludes the setup. We'll pick up in part 2 with the animation. And if you want to download my file, you can do that in the Discord, link in the description below. And if you found this video in any way, shape, form, or fashion even remotely helpful, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below the video to stay tuned for part 2. Link also in the description if it's up yet. Also, just a friendly reminder that I am live every Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday at twitch.tv/oraclefishlive. If you have any questions, want to pick a fight with me, or just want to hang out. Until next time, my name is Chris Folea. I'm your stream professor. Class is out.